Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control.
We think we have it very well under control. We pretty much shut it down. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle, it will disappear. We can hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000. It's a horrible number. We all together have done a very good job.
As the nation surpassed 4 million COVID cases and over 145,000 deaths this week.
It's something that we have tremendous control of, and I think we're going to win faster than people think, I hope.
You're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. The virus is going to disappear. I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine.
The coronavirus itself, SARS-CoV-2, is here to stay.
As the U.S. surpasses a staggering 400,000 deaths, the incoming CDC director says another 100,000 could die in the next month.
It is what it is.
It's going to fade away. We're in very good shape.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
There's insanity in the control room.
Welcome to the show. It's Friday. That's it. It's Friday. I'm sure all of us are looking forward to the end of the week, of course, and the start of the weekend. But hey, we've got some news stories to go through today, of course. Before I do that, I do have to do a slight adjustment. I had some technical issues in starting the show, so I'm started the stream a little bit later than I was hoping for, and so. I had some technology that was not working, but it seems to be working now. And so, like I said, we're going to have some fun stories. We got Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook lawsuits. That's fun. We got more stuff from the book, Grisham's book, about Jared and Ivanka, of course. Then we're going to talk about the infrastructure bill, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, what's going on there. There's supposed to be a vote yesterday. I'm sorry. There was supposed to be a vote yesterday. It did not happen. And so is there going to be a vote today? We're going to see, but I'm going to, of course, discuss the motives behind Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and why they are not supporting it, of course. And then we have the progressive response. And finally, we're going to talk about some of the emails that were hacked, showing a link between the Oath Keepers and the NYPD. So I don't think any of you are going to be surprised by that story, but we're going to go through it anyway, because it is pretty important stuff. So, drain Alex's financial swamp dry. Yeah, please, yeah. Go ahead. The deep state's going to come after me. That's what they're doing. They're going to try to come after me for telling the truth. Sure. Yeah, Sinema walked away. Literally, she's gone. She's she's out of Washington. Shows, gone. Fun times. But not actually fun, because guess what? We're not going to have a vote now. Hold the line, progressives. That's all I can say. Hold the line. Oath Keeper cops. It's just in water. I know, but I still feel like I need to talk about it. For anybody who comes across the video who is not familiar, because remember, some people, like my core audience, y'all know a lot about what's happening. But the hope is that this will come across people, or people will come across these videos that point out what's really going with the cops and what's going on in these different situations, and gets people to think, hey, wait a minute, this is not what I'm hearing on cable news, or this is what's actually happening. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. So I'm hoping I can reach new people as well. And so that's the hope. That is the hope. Hope springs eternal, I should say. All right. It didn't feel like it was 4 p.m. already. I know, it's fast. It has been a fast day. So, like I said, we're going to start out here. Oh, you know what? Before I do, just programming note. I'm going to be on the Terror Bus here tomorrow night at 7. We're going to discuss whether or not the United States is doomed. I'm going to try to bring a little hopium into this. And I know this is going to be difficult, but I'm going to try to unblack pill Terra and see what happens. You know, undoomer some people, and I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I'm going to do my best to try to inject a little positivity, even though there is a lot of negativity going on, of course. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'm a hopeful person. I'm more hopeful than I think a lot of you are. Unfortunately. All right. So anyway, let's dive in. Let's start out with Alex Jones. This is a good story. Wish I had your optimism. It's hard. It's hard, folks. I know. I get you. But the progress, you know, I should say the forces of history always go towards progress. For every dark age comes a renaissance. So I appreciate your optimism. Hopeful but realistic. Oh yeah, I'm definitely as well. Anyway, let's go with, as I said, the Alex Jones story. You're gonna love this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yes, it appears we have a judgment in the case against Alex Jones, or the 2 cases against Alex Jones over the false claims of the Sandy Hook shooting. So now Alex Jones, of course, famously has been calling the 2012 shooting a gigantic hoax. Oh, it's fake crisis actors and all that stuff. Deep state coming for your guns, etc., etc. So now, of course, these families who were massively affected by this because members of Alex Jones' audience would harass them, and there were members of these families that have suffered just unimaginable loss, having to go from home to home to home to avoid Alex Jones's crazed fans. These are people, again, who are like, oh, you're just a crisis actor, you're just this, you're just that, you're not real, didn't actually happen, I will keep my guns, and all that insane stuff. So now they filed lawsuits against him, and it turns out that Alex Jones, through his own actions, has been ruled against. I will explain. District Judge Maya Guerra Gamble of Travis County, Texas, had issued something called a default judgment against Jones and InfoWars as well, after they did not comply with court orders to give information in a pair of 2018 lawsuits brought against him by the families of 2 children killed in the 2012 massacre. So now, Jones repeatedly failed to hand over documents and evidence to the court supporting his damaging and erroneous claims that the school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, which killed 26 people, 20 of whom were young children, was a false flag operation carried out by so-called crisis actors. So let's go back to just how sickening these claims are. All right. So this is somebody who's a very, very public figure. All right. Who is going around accusing parents for years and years and years, accusing these parents who've lost children in one of the most horrifying ways of being fake and they're just actors and it wasn't real and their grief and loss, etc., is faked and it's bad. It's part of some government conspiracy. And I just want to show you, by the way. So to me, this seems like an open and shut case. All right. And probably why Alex Jones didn't want to hand any evidence over, because it's right there. Years and years and years of Alex Jones saying insane things like this.
Sandy Hook, it's got inside job written all over it. Sandy Hook is a synthetic, completely fake, with actors, in my view, manufactured. I couldn't believe it at first. You saw them stage Fast and Furious. Folks, they staged Aurora. They staged Sandy Hook. The evidence is just overwhelming. The truth is they've had national polls where upwards of half of Americans don't believe Sandy Hook because they don't believe a word the mainstream media says. We've sent reporters up there, man, and that place is like Children of the Corn or something. I mean, it is frickin' weird. And then the weird videos of reported parents of kids laughing, and all of a sudden they do the hyperventilating to cry to go on TV. All I know is something's going on. And you don't like us looking at it. You don't like us questioning you. The father needs to clarify, that NBC needs to clarify, because the coroner said none of the parents were allowed to touch the kids or see the kids. And maybe they, meaning at the school, I'm sure later maybe the parents saw their children. Could be that, you know, we need to get clarification. I went on, I could never find out. The stuff I found was they never let them see their bodies. That's kind of what's weird about this, but maybe they did. So I'm sure it's all real. Folks, we've got video of Anderson Cooper with clear blue screen out there. He's not there in the town square. We've got people clearly coming up and laughing and then doing the fake crying. We've clearly got people where it's actors playing different parts of different people. The building bulldoze, covering up everything. Adam Lanza trying to get guns 5 times, we're told. The witnesses, you know, not saying it was him. People out in the woods. And break down what you believe is a total hoax. I've looked at it, and undoubtedly there's a cover-up, there's actors, they're manipulating, they've been caught lying, and they were pre-planning before it and rolled out with it.
So that's just a sampling of some of the stuff he said since 2012. I mean, you've got tons of video out there of him saying the most, again, heinous things. Oh, it's a hoax, all that. And so now, that said, those are his previous statements. In a deposition in 2019, after he got sued, he started to change his tune just a little bit, just a slight bit. In fact, I want to show you some of that deposition. Take a look.
Don't go investigate it. I believe mass shootings happened, and I'm sorry, and some of the anomalies we were told were wrong. And I've said it, I've probably been saying that 4 years. Okay. And so I've been trying to say, particularly, you know, hey, it's not my identity, and I believe it happened, and I'm sorry for your, you know, any pain you've had. But I think children died. I believe mass shootings happened. They just had one in Brazil, a tragedy, and I believe it's a crisis. It's traumatic, and so people go and they find anomalies, and then I've kind of retrospectively gone back and seen how I did believe that stuff. And then I go back and I've now studied more, actually, the real anomalies, and it's just the school system and government trying to cover its rear end from liability. And so there definitely has been there's been a cover-up of the events. And I think there's a lot of evidence showing there could have been a second shooter. There is the helicopter footage of the man in the woods. I still have questions about Sandy Hook, but I know people that know some of the Sandy Hook families. They say no, it's real. People I think are credible, and so over the years I've especially as it became a huge issue, had time to really retrospectively think about it, and as the whole thing matured, had a chance to believe that children died, and it's a tragedy, but there are still real anomalies in the attempt to basically keep it blacked out, that generally when you see that in government, something's being covered up.
Even went on to say that, oh, no, you know what? I did believe in it, but that was because I had a form of psychosis where I thought, oh, man, yeah, everything is staged. Oh, yeah, it's, everything's staged. You can't trust the government. The media's lying to you, so you don't really know what's real. I'm just asking questions. No, you knew it was BS. Absolutely. Now, here's the thing, right? He claimed, his lawyer, I should say, back in 2017, when he was going through divorce proceedings, the lawyer claimed that he's a performance artist. No, all the stuff that Alex Jones says on the show, it's complete nonsense. He knows it's all nonsense. He knows it's all crap. But he's just doing it because he's being entertaining. That's what it is. It's just performance art. It's just entertainment. Don't take it really seriously. In fact, nobody would ever take it seriously, which of course led to the Tucker Carlson defense later on by saying, well, no reasonable person would ever take anything that Tucker Carlson says seriously. I mean, who would perish the thought, right? Would you ever take any of these nutbags seriously on anything that they ever say? But people do. That's the whole point. You pushed your audience. Alex Jones pushed his audience to go and terrorize these families based on nothing but, again, he revealed his sources to be 4chan. Rando posts on 4chan and emails that people would send him. He even admitted, well, of course we didn't actually look into this. Did we do any sort of investigation into what happened on Sandy Hook? Not really. We just relied on news reports, which really, of course, were just random rantings from chuds on 4chan. So, come on. He knows it's all BS. He doesn't actually do any sort of journalism or investigative whatever, okay, like he claims that he does. He's a crackpot and puts out crackpot theories for money. That's it. That's it. Now, this led to Gamble's scathing ruling, he said, which lambasted Jones and his website's parent company, Free Speech Systems, for having, quote, intentionally disobeyed the court's requests and showing flagrant bad faith and callous disregard in not turning over documents related to this and other lawsuits filed against him. An escalated series of judicial admonishments, monetary penalties, and non-dispositive sanctions have all been ineffective at deterring the abuse, Gamble wrote. He was ordered last year, by the way, to pay under almost $150,000 in legal fees after he failed to provide discovery documents for attorneys representing those Sandy Hook families. So he's just flat out refusing to do anything. Like, oh, you want documents? Yeah, how about this? That's your document. That's essentially what he does. And by the way, in 2019, he was also sanctioned for allegedly sending emails containing illegal images of children to the family's attorneys. Stuff that would get them in trouble if they knowingly opened it, possessed it, etc. They said that when a consultant was reviewing documents Jones turned over for the case, they found an image that appeared to be CP, basically. Which, of course, they immediately contacted counsel and the FBI. The FBI looked into it, found numerous additional illegal images in those documents, apparently been sent to InfoWars email addresses. It is worth noting that if the Jones defendants, the statement said, had engaged in even minimal due diligence and actually reviewed the materials before production, they would have found the images themselves. Because the Jones defendants did not do that, they transmitted images to the plaintiffs that, if they were knowingly possessed, is a serious federal crime. Gamble also said Jones showed a general bad faith approach to litigation that was supported by Mr. Jones' public threats and Mr. Jones' professed belief that these proceedings are show trials. The court finds the defendant's failure to comply is greatly aggravated by their consistent pattern of discovery abuse throughout similar cases pending before this court. The court finds the defendant's discovery conduct in this case is a result of flagrant bad faith and callous disregard for the responsibilities of discovery under the rules. So again, all this led to a default judgment. So what is the default judgment? Well, basically, the plaintiffs win by default because Alex Jones took his ball and went home, essentially. And so now it kind of makes you wonder, why? Why would he do this? Why? I mean, so I think, of course, he didn't want to be part of this. Maybe he thought that he wasn't going to get in trouble for this, claiming, oh no, free speech, free speech, free speech, free speech. Free speech doesn't allow you to incite violence. And that's what this is. He incited his audience to go and threaten and harass other people by consistently lying and defaming a family through these conspiracies. That's it. That's what we're doing here. That's what he does every single day. Every single time he talks about this, he goes and he defames people. He talks trash and does nothing but nonsense conspiracies. So the only thing that I can hope is that these penalties are significant enough, not to just, because you're never going to get Jones to not do anything, but to bankrupt his company. I don't necessarily believe that that's going to happen, knowing what I know about, the way the justice system kind of works, the way the juries work. It probably will be a significant fine. It will pay for, legal fees and things like that for the family, and that's good. They get some sort of restitution. But to think that this will stop Alex Jones from doing what he's doing, very unlikely. But I still have a little bit of hope that maybe something will change. We'll see. We'll see what happens when the jury decides. Okay. Moving on. Go to Jared and Ivanka. So we have some more details from the tell-all book from former White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham. So this time she talks about the early response to COVID-19, which we know is a complete mess. So far, COVID has killed nearly 700,000 Americans, and many experts contend that had we had an earlier, very robust response to the pandemic, many of those deaths might not have happened. Fortunately for us, that early response was led by none other than Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Two people who have no idea what they're doing, never had any idea what they're doing, and yet somehow, for some reason, we're put in these very important positions. Weird. So now Grisham described these two as know-it-alls. Interesting. So now here's what she wrote. When I worked for the First Lady in the East Wing, we had all come to call Jared and Ivanka the interns, which of course is very insulting to interns, because they represented in our minds obnoxious, entitled know-it-alls. Again, think of the poor interns, okay? Interns are not that bad. So I'm just gonna say that. I'm gonna defend the honor of interns everywhere and say that Ivanka and Jared, far, far worse than any intern ever. Just say that, okay? Just gonna say that. So now, Mrs. Trump had found that nickname amusing and occasionally used it herself. So now, great, okay, so that the interns, and they go and they, they're know-it-alls, like, oh, I know this, I know that, I can do this job, I can do that. Okay, what happened to peace in the Middle East? Did we ever get peace in the Middle East? No? Of course not. So now, unfortunately, and again, I talked about this before, early on in the Trump administration, before COVID happened, I said, just imagine the dysfunction that we already know, that's already been publicized. Imagine what would happen if we ever had a real crisis. And it turns out we had a real crisis. And now Grisham goes on to explain how they dealt with the crisis. In fact, Grisham describes how, as COVID-19 began to spread across the globe in late February 2020, Kushner had pushed Trump to travel during a pandemic to India. Even though the president actually didn't want to, because the president's lazy. And I mean Trump, right? Kushner also ended up negotiating directly with the Indian government about what the White House security assets in the ground would be. Once again, it's a duty that is normally reserved for the Secret Service. But no, Kushner's got to jump right in. Kushner's like, no. I'm going to do this because I'm important. I'm important. Now, Grisham writes that this was just another example of Jared sticking his nose into things that were not his expertise. Again, it didn't really have an expertise other than, I guess, running a slum, a building that screws over tenants, people that live there. I mean, that if that's a skill, I mean, that's what he's good at. That's where he makes his money, off the Kushnervilles. Not so much with COVID and peace in the Middle East. Now, she said it felt completely irresponsible and against protocol, which is the epitome of Jared Kushner in the Trump White House. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure what she expected from this. I mean, elect the clown, get a circus. And by the way, Stephanie Grisham, for a long time, was part of that circus. And I got to keep pointing that out because now she's like, oh man, how terrible, blah, blah, blah. But you were in it. You were part of this. And you didn't leave until the very, very end. When something bothered you so much, the January 6th Capitol insurrection, that's when you got out. But nowhere else. So when the writing was on the wall, that's when Stephanie Grisham said, all right, that's it, I'm out. Gone. I'm done. So it's cowardice on her part. Nonetheless, I do enjoy that she is spilling the tea. And so I'm going to continue to read these excerpts and not actually buy her book. Please don't buy her book. All right. So that said, she further explains that in early March, after the WHO declared that COVID-19 was a pandemic, Ivanka and Jared insisted on, during a meeting in the Oval Office, that Trump deliver a televised address to the nation. Now, the problem is, of course, with everything in the Trump White House, there was no plan, there was no strategy. And nobody knew what the hell they were doing. The result, of course, was the president going in front of the country and saying basically nothing. And I'm going to show you that address here in a minute, or at least some of it. But Grisham went on to describe those discussions. Quote, in the middle of all that, Ivanka kept chiming in, but I think there should probably be an address to the nation tonight. Finally, Ivanka turned to her most powerful ally besides her father. Jared, don't you agree? Any guesses as to what Jared replied? None, of course. At one point, he said, I called Ivanka out on her plan with what seemed to be an obvious question. What is it we'd be saying? Because if she had a message she wanted her father to deliver, it was still a mystery to me. She just looked at me, seemingly confused. Well, of course she didn't have any idea. But understand that none of that matters, right? None of it matters at all. The number one rule in the Trump family is to get in front of the camera as soon as you can. No matter what, never waste a crisis, right? Doesn't matter if you have a plan. Doesn't matter if you have anything to say. Just make something up in the spot. So, also you can get in front of it and get good ratings. Understand that these people chase the media. And in return, of course, the media chases them. It's kind of a vicious cycle. Unfortunately, I am also feeding into that cycle by covering these stories. And I'm completely aware of that little, of that little issue. Let's just say they're that good at, chasing that camera. But anyway, so that said, it works really good, that strategy, in celebrity circles, which is essentially what they are. And even in some cases when it comes to politics, chasing that camera and getting out and getting ahead and becoming a media spectacle can be pretty good. However, where it fails is when you have to deal with policy, when you have to deal with something that is actually pretty serious and requires a consistent, strong message. Because what you need to do as president during a crisis is to have a plan to reassure the population that you're taking proactive steps, that you're doing the right thing, and that even before you deliver that message, you've already started setting that up. Unfortunately, none of that happened. So now Trump did direct a group, which included Vice President Mike Pence, Dr. Anthony Fauci, to go into the cabinet room and to, quote, figure out what to do outside the commander-in-chief's presence. So he didn't even go in the room. Well, of course. Why would he go in the room? You think he cares about details? No. You think he cares about the nitty gritty of what's going on, of the policy and what we should do? Oh, no, of course not. That's for nerds. Hey, Poindexter, go figure this out for me while I go sit here and eat hamburgers and watch cable news. And tweet, by the way, because he still had a Twitter account back then. Now, what happened in that room, of course, is, once again, disaster. She describes this, quote, "What struck me in that cabinet room meeting was that Jared, who was sitting next to the vice president of the United States, commandeered the meeting and was calling all the shots. As many times as I'd seen him behave that way with members of our senior staff, that particular time made me uneasy because it was with the vice president. It was disrespectful, and I remember feeling both embarrassed and disgusted." Once again, not as embarrassed and disgusted enough to quit. Just saying. But it gets worse. So now Jared was running the show. While that was happening, Ivanka was also in the meeting doing what she does best, saying, "Daddy, my daddy says." Grisham adds, and I'm serious, Ivanka was also doing her "my father wants this and my father thinks that" routine, making it impossible for staff members to argue a contrary view. Now, my question, of course, is if Donald Trump wanted it so bad, why wasn't he in the meeting? It's because it's not what Donald Trump wanted, what Ivanka Trump wanted. And look, Ivanka Trump wants money and clout, and to be, honestly, she wants to be taken seriously. That's why she kept going up to the people at the G20 meeting and getting rejected. Like, okay, yep, we see you, little girl, okay. But you don't have anything to add to this to the conversation because you're dumb. Go sit back down. And that's what was going on here. She does not know what she's talking about. She's not an expert. She's a failed daughter. And that's it. Why is her input important at all? So, of course, she has to say, "Daddy, but my daddy said..." No, if you want to be taken as a serious person, then why don't you work on being a serious person? Get some education, learn some things, come back. Now, Grisham said the entire situation left her feeling both helpless and demoralized and outraged at Kushner's behavior. She said he was not an expert on any of those things, shutting down borders, the economic consequences, the health consequences, yet he alone seemed to be deciding the nation's first actions to address one of the most devastating crises in our history. Kushner, of course, also ultimately wrote Donald Trump's speech, but left no time for fact-checking, as if they would ever do that anyway, or vetting, once again, never do that, or even enough time for Trump to read it. He never reads it anyway. He's a one-pager kind of guy. That's it. And so Donald Trump will read anything off the prompter. In fact, here he is reading stuff off the prompter.
Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic. We have been in frequent contact with our allies, and we are marshaling the full power of the federal government and the private sector to protect the American people. This is the most aggressive and comprehensive effort to confront a foreign virus in modern history. I am confident that by counting and continuing to take these tough measures, we will significantly reduce the threat to our citizens, and we will ultimately and expeditiously defeat this virus. After consulting with our top government health professionals, I have decided to take several strong but necessary actions to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. The new rules will go into effect Friday at midnight. These restrictions will be adjusted subject to conditions on the ground. There will be exemptions for Americans who have undergone appropriate screenings, and these prohibitions will not only apply to the tremendous amount of trade and cargo, but various other things as we get approval. Anything coming from Europe to the United States is what we are discussing. These restrictions will also not apply to the United Kingdom.
Please clap.
Jeb energy right there. Definitely not normal Donald Trump, but reading off the prompter, very poorly Donald Trump. So, again, here's what Grisham had to say about that, by the way. It was a total clusterfuck from start to finish because Ivanka and her crew wanted her father to be on TV. And of course, noted that the speech contained a number of misstatements and sloppy wording, some caused by the president stumbling over a few phrases that sowed confusion about such things as which countries would be affected by the new travel restrictions and if international trade would be banned. After the speech, the White House was flooded with calls from federal agencies seeking clarification about the speech, and a line of reporters formed outside of Grisham's office. So, whoops, that's what happens when Princess gets her way. Oh, I'm sorry, one of the interns. So now what happened after that speech, which, again, Donald Trump was not happy about? Well, nothing happened to Ivanka. Nothing happened to Jared. Nothing happened to anybody except for the communications team. In fact, here's what she wrote. Of course it was our problem, not Jared or Ivanka or Hope Hicks, who was still in the White House at the time. No, they were in the dining room of the Oval Office. Off of the Oval Office, Trump's usual hangout, congratulating themselves and telling the president how awesome he was. Oh, yes, why don't we just give ourselves a pat in the back for this very disastrous speech? No, the real problem was the communications team. We did great. They're the ones that messed up. Gee, yeah, can you see why Stephanie Grisham might have a little bit of a bone to pick with Jared and Ivanka? I have noticed that some of the best juicy stuff in this book, in the excerpts that have been released, have been about Jared and Ivanka. Oh, she despises them. And this is a good, window into why. Because she'd always get the shit where Jared and Ivanka would be treated like would-be royalty. Because that's what they believed themselves to be. So, now, again, this is what happens, unfortunately, when non-serious people are handed serious power. Again, elect the clown, get a circus. And it goes, by the way beyond just the politics. Understand that this is the effects of this entire chaos in the White House was deadly and disastrous for the country. Remember, you had all this economic hardship as a result of COVID, all the death, and all of that is the fault of Trump, Kushner, and Ivanka, Stephen Miller, and many of the others. So now one more note here about Kushner himself from Grisham. She says, I had shared with Mrs. Trump many times my opinion that if we lost re-election in 2020, it would be because of Jared. It was my fervent opinion that his arrogance and presumption had grown over the years, and he threw his power about with absolutely no shame. I would venture to say that being in the White House changed Jared as a person. There was no reason that he should be sitting with the speechwriter laying out our nation's plan to fight a global pandemic. And I knew that if things went badly with the speech, felt inevitable, he would be the first person to say in the president's ear that it was the comms team that had fucked it all up. He was Rasputin in a slim-fitting suit. Other nicknames I have heard, of course, is the Slim Reaper, or what some of you have suggested, Slenderman. But here's the thing, though. I don't think Jared changed at all. I think this is an example of what power does to people. It exposes who they actually are, or who they have always been, in this case. So if you're a terrible person with no power, well, you're still a terrible person. Now, if you're a terrible person with no power, but have aspirations to do so and access, say you were born with lots and lots of money, well then, you're going to do what you have to do. You're going to kiss the asses that you have to kiss in order to get ahead. And then when you do get that power, all the pretense disappears. And you reveal how horrible you've always been. You get to throw your weight and your power around. And that's what Jared Kushner did. That's it. Again, he was an advisor. He knew nothing about the job that he was going to fill, and yet tried to fill all the jobs. And the disaster of the country, I mean, we see the result of this. We see the result. And again, I think Stephen Miller and Jared Kushner were more president than Donald Trump was. Call it a shadow presidency, if you will. Donald Trump, of course, is the face and the mouth. He held the pen, said the words. Miller and Kushner wrote those words, wrote the speeches, crafted some of the policies, all of it, of course, based on what Donald Trump actually said he wanted. But what Donald Trump wanted was just based on what his fans wanted. It was a reflection of the Republican base and what they wanted. So he said the things and did the things that they wanted him to do in order to get money, to be, in power, to get more money and political power, as I said. And that's why, of course, this was a mess. Nobody knew at all what they were doing, especially the president. And now, nearly 700,000 Americans later, and millions more have lost homes, jobs, etc. as a result of all this. It's just another example of why we can't let incompetence back into the government again or ever, because it ends up being an absolute disaster. Oh, you picked that up. We will ban all travel. Also, the UK is not banned. Yeah, see, that's a great example. Great example. Right there. All right. So let's go to our next story here. Absolutely. That's why the right wing talks about how Biden's a puppet being run, pure projection. Yeah, I know. Wouldn't it be awesome if Biden were a puppet of the far left? We'd be a lot happier, wouldn't we? I mean, again, we are considered to be the far left, wanting everybody to have health care. Whoa, scary far leftist. Whoa. No. Would be nice though. Be nice. Stop threatening us with a good time. Really. Stop trying to make Biden cooler than he is. All right. The Democrats and Joe Biden continue to negotiate among the donors about the passage of the infrastructure package. So now the infrastructure actually does come in two parts. There's the pro-corporate infrastructure package, of course, that's supported by Chamber of Commerce, fossil fuel lobbyists, big corporations, etc. And alongside it is the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill that would grant things like free childcare, climate change measures, and expansion of healthcare, Medicare specifically, to cover things like dental, and other pretty popular proposals for regular people. So Democrats said, well, okay, we're going to pass this together. And the reason is, of course, that we're not going to decouple these, is so that both of them will pass. Because, Republicans and corporate Democrats are against the $3.5 trillion package. But progressives say, okay, well, we're not going to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill unless you give us the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. So that, of course, has it really makes the Democrats have to face off against their donors, which are represented, in this case, by people like Josh Gottheimer in the House and Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin in the Senate. So they are the two right now that are holding up this vote. Gottheimer and I think 9 other corporate Democrats in the House tried to hold it up, but progressives were able to, since they do have a majority here in the House, along with other Democrats, decided to pass it anyway. So that's good. That's good. Now, that said, you've got the Senate Democrats that are holding this up. Now, of course, they're holding this up because, again, it's because of what the donors want. They represent the donors. Sinema, for example, has taken about $750,000 in bribes from the pharmaceutical industry. Well, part of the bill, the reconciliation bill, would allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry to bring down the price of prescription drugs. So now she keeps saying, oh, yeah, I'm against this. This is too much money. So people naturally ask her, okay, well, give us a number. Give us a number we can work with. And we'll pass it on to the progressives. We'll see what the progressives have to say. But just give us something. Give us a number. Let's negotiate. And she says, no, I don't have a number. Well, why don't you have a number? Because I don't want a number. I don't want to pass this because it enrages my donors. Now, Joe Manchin, of course, also doesn't want this, as I said, because he makes twice his congressional salary from investments in coal. Now, climate change, of course, has, the reconciliation package has limits on climate change, on emissions. And so that does not fit very well with Joe Manchin's personal income. And that's what's going on. His personal income is in jeopardy. So now he admitted that he already knew this and that he's been stringing people along for some time. In fact, on Thursday, he said he never even wanted to really work on the reconciliation package at all. In fact, he said it had been the corporate Democrats' plan to first secure passage of the fossil fuel-friendly legislation and then undermine the party's more ambitious reconciliation package, or just block it outright. So this is why, by the way, this is why you had to keep them together, why you couldn't have the bipartisan infrastructure package pass first. Because if it passes first, then Manchin's going to blow up the whole thing, and we're only going to get the corporate-friendly version. So now, he told reporters on Thursday that on July 28th, he had secured a signed agreement from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer outlining his conditions for voting on the reconciliation bill. So now Chuck Schumer said, yeah, I saw that, but, we didn't agree to it. I just acknowledged that that was his condition. So what are his conditions? In addition to demanding a top-line figure no higher than $1.5 trillion, something he reiterated on Thursday, Manchin said in July that he wanted to delay debate on the reconciliation package until October 1st. So that would be literally today. Now, on Thursday, September 30th, they were supposed to have the vote. That vote, it has been delayed. So, all right, so let's break down his demands, right? So remember, the $3.5 trillion, he says, oh, it's too much, right? That's over 10 years. It's $350 billion a year. All right, so that's how the numbers. So don't be afraid of the numbers here. Because, oh my God, $3.5 trillion. You mean we're going to spend it today? No, we're going to spend it over 10 years. And when you look at it, when you look at other budget things, like, for example, the military budget, which is $770 billion every year, that comes out to $7.7 trillion over 10 years. Yet Manchin and Sinema, when you look at social spending, by the way, they both support that Pentagon bill, right? All that money going to the military, 100%. Oh yeah, no problem. We support it. Sure, great. We'll keep voting for it every single year. But on this, they're like, no, too expensive. How are we going to pay for that? Well, the bill, by the way, has some pay-fors that are built into it. For example, some of those pay-fors involve increasing taxes on corporations and the wealthy. Something that's popular among both parties, among most Americans. You're going to find a lot of agreement that corporations don't pay enough. They don't pay their fair share. So now the plan called for corporate taxes and individual tax rates of 26.5 and 39.6 respectively, according to a summary released by the Tax Writing Ways and Means Committee. The proposal includes a 3% surcharge on individual income above $5 million and a capital gains tax of 25%. It would also hike taxes on certain tobacco products. The proposal would also change or scale back certain deductions for high-income individuals, corporations to raise money. So you're doing a partial rollback, essentially, of Donald Trump's tax cuts for the rich. So now Manchin says, I'm not okay with spending $3.5 trillion. I want to go to $1.5 trillion. But I'm okay with raising corporate tax rates, but no more than 25%. Now, the Biden administration wanted to raise the corporate tax rate to 28%. Now he's saying, no, 25%. It is currently 21%. So I would say it's still too low. Now, Sinema comes in and says, actually, no, I don't want any corporate tax rates. No corporate tax hikes at all. But maybe I'll do a corporate carbon tax. So now she says that. Manchin says, no, absolutely not. We're not going to do a carbon tax. So they're both not only negotiating, or I should say arguing on behalf of their donors to the rest of the Democrats, they're also arguing on behalf of their respective donors to each other. And the result is we're not moving at all. We're not doing anything. And by the way, ironically, and these tweets have been deleted, by the way, there's a tweet from Kirsten Sinema saying, asking big corporations and the rich to pay their fair share is common sense, not class warfare. What now? Why the change of heart? Oh, right. She got paid over $900,000 in legal bribes from industry groups. In fact, her former aide is a top lobbyist for JP Morgan Chase, who was, again, one of the groups that is fighting against raising the corporate tax rate and against this infrastructure bill. As for Manchin, of course, Ari Natter, who was a reporter, had asked him whether an energy company he founded is a conflict of interest as he negotiates this reconciliation bill. Here's what he says. I've been in a blind trust for 20 years. I have no idea what they're doing. Really? You have no idea what they're doing? It's your money. Look, if I had money, which I don't, if I had that kind of money that Joe Manchin has, millions and millions of dollars, again, he makes not only his congressional salary, but also double that from fossil fuel holdings, his investments, run by his son. It's a lot of money. You're, of course, going to pay attention to where your money is. Aren't you? No, apparently not. Apparently, if you're Joe Manchin who sleeps on a yacht, you don't care at all. You don't know what are you talking about? Blind trust. I have no idea what they're doing with my money. Who? Now, the reporter followed it up, and this is kind of amazing because you don't hear about this a lot, on corporate news. But this guy asked, the energy company that you founded, your son still owns it, doesn't he? To which Manchin had replied, you'd do best to change the subject. Ooh. Oh, somebody's triggered. Not happy. Not happy about this at all. So now he's going to go around threatening reporters for asking about his own corruption. Turns out he don't like that. He don't like that at all. Especially when we're used to mainstream reporters essentially being on Manchin's side, which is starting to change just a little bit. I know they're still running like puff pieces about Kirsten Sinema. Oh, she's just going her own way. And she's an enigma. No, you look at the money. You look at her campaign donations. You can find exactly where she stands. Exactly where she stands. Now, the thing is, I think Manchin is overplaying his hand because I do believe the Democrats actually do want to get something done. Believe it or not, they want to stay in power, so they want to pass the corporate-friendly bill. That's going to please their donors, but they also have to get something to the voters. I don't think the full $3.5 trillion bill is going to pass. It would be amazing if it did, because it's a significant investment. But I don't think that they're going to go down to the $1.5 trillion either. I think it will probably end up somewhere in between $2.5 trillion. And again, that would involve progressives holding. And I don't want that to happen, but let's be real about that. When haven't we seen that happen? I mean, if they come up with a deal for them to take, I could see them possibly taking it. Let's hope that doesn't happen. And let's hope it's actually the corporate Democrats that fold in this case. But I don't know. That said, in this situation, it's kind of different what's going on here. In fact, the corporate bill was scheduled for a vote on yesterday and delayed even today. Look, and as far as I know, they haven't held the vote today. It was possible that it could be planned today, that it might have happened today, but so far I haven't seen it happen today, and so I don't know exactly how this is going to go. I do hope that progressives do hold the line, and what's different here is that they are fighting for Biden's agenda, whereas Manchin and Sinema, in this case, they're the odd ones out that are fighting only for their donors, specifically, against everyone else. Everybody knows a carbon tax is BS, does nothing, and just something to say, oh yeah, I know. I think I've talked about how that's like an industry talking point to do nothing. But nonetheless, that's what she says she's open to. That's the only tax. And understand that that is why she's in favor of that. Because, oh, it sounds good, but it doesn't actually mean anything. But look at me. I'm not against raising all taxes. I'm okay for a carbon tax. So it's a good thing to point that out. And thank you for that super chat pointing that out. These bills were being positioned in the last few weeks to try to make progressives the bad guys. Hold the line. All right. Well, one more story on Manchin. As the negotiations for the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package entered their most heated phase, progressives such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went after Joe Manchin's hypocrisy on spending. You see, Manchin recently laid out a top line of $1.5 trillion in social spending. So he says, well, that's it. That's all we can spend. I'm not comfortable spending any more money on social programs. So now that, of course, would be $150 billion a year in spending. Build Back Better program, as it's called, as a reconciliation package is called, is asking for about $350 billion a year. That would have elements that would be paid for by tax increases on the rich and corporations. Manchin against those tax increases. However, AOC points out that while Manchin is saying, well, so much debt, we just can't take on all this debt. He points out that he has no problem taking on that debt when it comes to the military. Interesting. So now on Twitter, she said, ever notice how deficit hawks vote for record high defense spending, yet claim bills that help people and challenge lobbyists are too much? Now, the proposed military budget for fiscal year 2022 is $770 billion. Think about that for a second. $770 billion. It's after we've left Afghanistan. Why do we need that much spending? Why? Now, AOC pointed out, she said, guess which one got rubber stamped and which gets deemed a spending problem? Now, last week, the House of Representatives passed the $770 billion military policy bill, which includes $740 billion for the Pentagon alone, by a vote of 316 to 113, with 38 Democrats voting no. The Senate is expected to pass its own version of the NDAA in the coming days, and so we're going to be spending over $7.7 trillion over the next 10 years in the military, but $3.5 trillion for regular people, humans. No, that's too much. We just can't afford it. We just can't afford it. And yet, Manchin was like, oh no, well, I will absolutely vote for it. Of course, why wouldn't I? In fact, the Week's Ryan Cooper observed that Manchin had voted for every single one of the military's budgets over the last decade. 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, all the way up to 2020, voting for a total of $9.1 trillion on the military. Cooper also wrote, while he occasionally complained about the wasteful military programs and asked for an audit of the Pentagon, these quibbles were never enough to get him to vote differently. He helped initiate inflate the already bloated war budget and regularly boasted about thus supporting the troops. This year, he did it again. So on one level, all this operatic moaning about the $3.5 trillion is ridiculous hypocrisy. Manchin has casually voted for nearly 3 times that for defense spending, money that killed hundreds of thousands of people and turned half the Middle East into a smoking crater. A modest fraction of that total to help parents pay their bills, give seniors dental coverage, fight climate change and so forth, is not some intolerable burden on the economy. God damn. That's pretty strong. 100% correct, by the way. But understand, this is not about the price tag. This is about who it benefits. The military budget benefits defense contractors. Whereas regular people would benefit from a lot of the stuff that's in the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. And by the way, corporations would mostly benefit from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is why Joe Manchin supports it unilaterally. So now, back to AOC here. She says, when you have a moving target, speaking about Joe Manchin, and we've been in negotiations for 6 months, and the 2 main senators still don't have an idea of what their number is, they just pulled one out yesterday. After being engaged with these conversations for 6 months, this is where it's leading. Their lack of consistency and their lack of homework is creating instability in the process. We can't negotiate with a melting or moving object. By the way, now, Joe Manchin, forever known as the melting object. We need to be serious, and right now, we are seeing from the conservative side, and the small cadre of people is a fundamentally unserious pattern of negotiation. Well, but they are unserious, and that's the thing. Again, it's not about being serious about delivering for the American people. It's always been about delivering for the donors. Manchin, again, literally sleeps on a yacht. You think he cares about regular working people? No, of course not. Think he cares about the debt? No, of course not. That's a talking point that's used whenever there's progressive legislation that helps regular people, not the donors. Smokescreen. The only things that he wants are things that benefit himself, donors, and the corporate donors. And it's not even about red state. It's not about moderate. Everybody makes a mistake, especially mainstream media, when they say, well, it's these moderate senators. The moderate senators. No, there is no such thing. There's corporate and non-corporate. This entire thing has been donors negotiating amongst themselves, representing the different industry groups. That's it. The majority of West Virginians want these bills to pass. The majority of Democrats actually do want these bills to pass. The only people who are stopping it are these donors who have chosen Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema as their puppets of the week. That's what's going on. That's who these people are. We have to defeat them. We have to get them out of the way. Then we have to get the money out of politics. If we ever want our system to actually work, to actually function for the American people. Donors negotiating against themselves, that is our government, plain and simple. Correct, BA. You are correct. Absolutely. Jeff, you're depressing me. Yeah, I know. I have a gift. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that not a gift? I'm sorry. Should I just like come back on Monday and just show a bunch of cat pictures? You know, hey everybody, sorry for depressing you for like the past 5 years that I've been doing the show, but here's some cat pictures. You'll feel better. Yes, as Nina Turner coined it, owner donors. Absolutely right, Mysterious Monolith. I love that. I love that saying, by the way. Wonderful. She's right to point that out. All right. Again, I don't see anything on... I do see Bernie here that's trending. Calling out, of course, the 52 senators, Republicans, and 2 supposed Democrats, but nothing, no update on any of this. So, and of course, the right wing is just going off on it. Look, oh, do you actually know that yeah, if you have a majority in the Senate, you actually win, right? Yes. Yeah, and that's why he's trying to corral the two corporate Democrats to vote with the rest of the the Democratic Party, and then have Kamala do the tiebreaker. Like, how stupid? They're stupid. They're stupid. They're disingenuous. Just insane. It's just Oh, look at Sean Hannity. Liberal math. Bernie says 2 senators can't be allowed to defeat what 48 senators want. Do you even understand how the fucking system works? Do you? You are showing how fucking dumb you are. Right there. Oh, gotcha. Oh, you can't do math. No, you don't know how the process works. Or actually, you know what? He does know how the process works. But he is depending on people, his audience, that learns nothing, that's actually really, really dumb. And they're dumb because they listen to people like Sean Hannity that teach them absolutely nothing. They don't know how the system ever works because nobody explains it to them. Nobody teaches them. And in fact, people like Sean Hannity fill them full of disinformation. And so they never learn a goddamn thing. Morons. Jesus Christ. It irritates me. Irritates me so much. And yes, the way that Senate works, even one senator can stop up a bill. Yeah, if you're the filibuster. All right. All right. Yeah, Hannity has no interest in teaching anyone anything. Yeah, no, agree. Can we recall those 2 senators? Unfortunately not. You know, Kyrsten Sinema is not going to be up for re-election until like 2024. And as far as Manchin goes, West Virginia keeps voting him in. I mean, they had a chance to do something different, but unfortunately, all that corporate money, all the advertising, etc., you know, and the Democratic Party, by the way, that fights against progressives constantly. Because they believe that, oh, West Virginia never elected progressive or whatever the reasons, they keep doing this and shooting themselves in the foot. And then, now we have Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema that's trying to wreck Biden and his legacy. And so, well, there you go. All right, anyway, that's it. I'm going to go. And I'm going to end the show. We're going to raid into someone else here. Let's raid into TYT for some Galaxy Brain. Then, so check that out. Looks like he's doing some stuff on. Now I don't remember his name. But anyway, check that out. It'd be a lot of fun. I'm gonna raid in. Other than that, please like and share. If you haven't already, thank you so much for watching. As always, love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you on Monday.
There's some whores in this house.
Give me a break.
Dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Please clap. Amazing.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.